Hey guys, in today's video, I want to talk about 3 different levels of retirement planning that I commonly see. So as we go through these different levels, try to see where you fit on the scale and try to think of where you want to be as you transition into retirement. So let's start with level 1. Level 1 is what I call the level where people just wing it. They transition into retirement and they know that they have a few retirement accounts, maybe they have a 401k, maybe they have a taxable account with some emergency money in it. They also know that they'll be receiving Social Security, but they really haven't put much thought into when they should claim Social Security. And there's really no estate plan in place. There hasn't been much tax planning, and they really haven't spent a lot of time figuring out how much money they need per year in order to live their ideal retirement. Let's talk about level 2. Level 2 is what I call a very simple plan. And that's where people will add up all their accounts, so all their 401ks, all of their financial accounts, and come up with a grand total. So let's say you add everything up and you have $900,000. The next step is they'll say, well, maybe my retirement will be about 30 years long. So if you add up all your accounts that equal $900,000, you divide it by 30 years and you come up with $30,000. So you say, well, I can spend about $30,000 a year in my retirement. And that's basically the plan. Now in this case, again, it's very simple and it's just assume $30,000 per year. So this assumes that even 20 years in that you're still spending $30,000 per year. So there's no consideration for inflation, and there's also no consideration for investment growth. In a lot of cases, when people are at this level, what they'll do is they'll say, well, I don't want to take any risk with my money. I want to keep it safe. So they'll keep most of it in a checking account or a CD or the money market. And they'll think by keeping their money very safe that they won't run out of money. But the problem is by being very safe, you're actually taking more risk because your money's probably not going to grow enough throughout your retirement to factor in inflation. In fact, that $30,000 that you would be taking from your savings per year, well, in 25 years, it would only be worth about half of what it is today. So if you can buy $30,000 worth of goods in your first year of retirement, well, in 25 years, you'd only be able to buy about $15,000 worth of goods. Another common characteristic about level 2 is that there's usually nothing factored in for emergencies. So the issue with this is if there is some type of financial emergency, the money to pay for that emergency comes out of their $900,000, and then therefore the amount that they can take out each year is reduced. This level also typically does not include any tax strategy or any estate planning. So there's nothing wrong with being in level 1 or level 2. In fact, most of the people that I work with are in level 1 or level 2, and our goal is to get them into level 3. So let's jump into level 3, which is the detailed financial plan. I'm going to go over a couple key elements to a detailed financial plan. If I were to list them all, this video would be way too long. So typically what we do is we start with the amount of money that they would need each year to live their dream retirement. The next thing we do is we look at their investments and we make sure that they're invested properly. And a lot of times what happens is we'll say, well, you could invest them this way, but it really becomes a conversation with what the client's comfortable with, what level of risk they're comfortable with so they can sleep at night. And different people respond to market volatility in different ways. So we come up with a portfolio that will grow throughout their retirement and be able to keep up with inflation, but also a portfolio that they understand and that they're comfortable with. At this point, what we'll do is we'll start looking at the probability of success. In other words, we'll run what's called a Monte Carlo analysis, and it will look at past history, and it will run thousands of different scenarios based on all different market conditions, and it will come up with a percentage of the probability of you not running out of money in retirement. And that number is extremely important. And then what we'll do is we'll make tweaks to your plan to get that probability up to around 80%, where it's at a point where as you live throughout your retirement, we can make adjustments and tweaks as the world and as the market changes. Another key element to the plan is stress testing. What I'll do is I'll run different scenarios such as, okay, you just retired and the market dropped 40%. How does this impact the rest of your retirement? Can your portfolio withstand a shock like that? What if inflation is worse than expected? So we have a lot of different scenarios that we can run through, and then we can make sure that your portfolio can withstand different shocks as the future comes. And as we know, the future is uncertain and things will probably happen. So we want to make sure that your retirement plan is durable. We also look at different tax strategies. So we'll try to figure out if you would benefit from maybe doing Roth conversions. And we'll also look at if there's a benefit of withdrawing from your accounts in a certain order. For instance, maybe it's beneficial to withdraw from your taxable account first, and then from your traditional IRAs next, and then from your Roth IRAs. But we'll do an analysis to see if there's a benefit there. We also make sure that you have an estate plan in place. We want to make sure that your assets transfer to your beneficiaries as efficiently as possible and that they stay out of probate. In other words, they stay out of the court system where there's a lot of unnecessary fees generated. We also look into different types of insurance that can protect your financial situation. So we'll also do a review of your homeowner's insurance, your auto insurance, your life insurance. Do you have the right amount of life insurance? And also, do you need life insurance at this stage of your life? We also go over insurance such as long-term care insurance to determine if your portfolio could pay for long-term care insurance in the future if you need it, or if perhaps a long-term care insurance policy would be the right choice for you to cover those expenses down the road in case you do need them. We also do an in-depth analysis on the amount of money you have set aside for emergencies. So the amount you have in your emergency fund is key. You want to make sure you're earning the most interest you can off of it, and you also want to make sure you have the right amount. You don't want to have too much money sitting in a safe investment generating minimal returns, but you also want to make sure that you don't have too little in your emergency fund, because then if there is an emergency, then you're going to have to pull from your investments that you weren't expecting to. Hopefully this video gave you a good sense of the different levels of planning. And what I've found is that the people who are in level 3 that have a detailed plan, they live a retirement with less stress, and they're not anxious about money all the time. They're not worried about running out of money. And as life happens, as the world happens, their plan is adjusted and they're confident in what was set up. So ultimately, if you're in level 1 or level 2 right now, your goal should be to get to level 3 and live the retirement of your dreams. And you've spent 30, 40 plus years saving this money. And it's a smart move to sit down and come up with a thought out plan that you can be confident in, where you can go out and enjoy your retirement and not be worried about running out of money. If you'd like help getting to level 3, please reach out via the link below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.